tonight. There's a town council meeting at 6:30. That council meeting will have a public hearing. We'll go over a little bit of this. A few other logistics. If you can sign in the back, that'll get you on some of our email lists. So if there's other updates on this project or others, we'll certainly get to that. We also have some blue note cards in the back. If while we're going through the presentation, if people have questions and want to write those down, one, so it sticks in your head, but two, when we get to the Q&A part, if people want to hand in the note cards, we'll kind of rip through those questions quick and first. Otherwise, we'll certainly have some mics and be able to walk around and get some questions from people. We are recording this and streaming it live, so we just want to make sure everything we do is through the microphones. So again, tonight we do want to talk about, give a brief overview of the process and the things that we've done. So tonight in this presentation, we'll talk a little bit about the disposition process, really where we are now, how we arrived at this preferred developer concept and the development team, what's next, and then we'll have a Q&A as part of that. We are going to do a brief presentation, and everything that we're covering tonight has been addressed in other public meetings before the town council, and it's all available up at greatergroton.com, which is our webpage. So again, if people have questions about that stuff, there's a lot of information out there. Before we go any further, I do want to introduce the team of us up here. For those of you that don't know me, my name's John Reiner. I'm the Director of Planning and Development for the town. With me is
Corinne Piazza, Economic and Community Development Manager.
I'm Will Cannon, Development Manager for Spinnaker Real Estate Partners, and we're the preferred developer for the Pleasant Valley School redevelopment.
Great, so diving into the next slide, again, our presentation will be brief so we can get to the Q&A, but to provide context for anyone who's joining us maybe for the first time or just as a helpful reminder, everyone's familiar with this graphic. This is essentially the town council's land disposition process in visual form, and it walks you through all of the phases that we go through to arrive at a preferred project. You can see with the We Are Here star, we are in the project concept and development partner selection section. Zooming in a bit more, essentially we're working to identify that preferred, previously, our town council worked to identify our preferred public benefits for this parcel. John will jump into a slide about that as well. But essentially, this new policy aims to ensure that people are involved throughout, not just at the end. So we like using this graphic to help folks understand the context of where we are now. Essentially, we haven't designed the project yet. We haven't identified terms yet. We're essentially picking the team that will help us arrive at the final product. So again, walking through the next phase, which is where we are now with identification of the preferred concept and development team. Essentially, the town council identified items that would go into the request for proposals or the priorities for this parcel. And that went through a property sale review committee. It also it had a public hearing, and it's now in the presentation portion and another public hearing. And you can see on this graphic, there's a lot of different colors, and essentially we wanted to highlight in pink, that's every time a public hearing or focused community input opportunity is available. Green is whenever an elected official or committee member is involved, and blue is essentially when town councilors are involved and folks can provide public comment via those meetings as well. So after the preferred project concept and development team is finalized, we move into terms of the purchase and sale agreement. So this is really important because we're essentially inviting a private partner to the table to provide expertise and a lot of funding that we don't have as a town to help us arrive at our goals for this parcel. But we don't really get into those terms of what that final project looks like until after the initial concept selected, and then we move into that. So if folks have questions about maybe what the final purchase price is or things like that, we haven't identified those yet. That's coming next. And then finally, after that, there's still a lot more checkpoints. So even after the terms are finalized with the town council, we move into additional community engagement around the proposed public park space on the parcel. Also, the final design comes back to town council again. then it also goes through the Planning and Zoning Commission process. And everything has to line up with that final purchase and sale agreement. So when folks ask, how do we know what we're choosing now actually happens, it all comes back to that legal document that we have that sees us through to the end to make sure whatever an agreed upon takes place. And additionally, if there were significant changes requested by planning and zoning, that then again comes back to town council to make sure it's aligned with that original agreement. All right.
And one of the things that we've been hearing a bit lately is, why is this development happening on this side of town? And one of the things that we wanted to look at is, so for those of you that aren't familiar with zoning maps and how things are done from a planning and zoning perspective, so this is a zoning map of really the western part of town, and there's certain areas around here that are zoned for commercial or multifamily development. This is an area of town that historically, it has infrastructure. So it has water, it has sewer, it has great roads and highway access. There's great utilities, and this has been our employment and kind of job center for the town historically. And when we look at where new development is happening, it's in the areas that are zoned for it. So although we've seen some, more development maybe being proposed or talked about in this end, historically, this is where it's always been within the town plans to have more development in this area. Also want to be very clear, for the last couple of years, we've been hearing from people about the need for more park space in District 4, and that's something that was incorporated into the request for proposals that the town council required us to put in there. So when we're working with Will in some of those later stages, designing that will be something that's addressed because we want to work that within the project. And then in addition to that, we are looking at some other solutions. We're working with and talking with the Navy, with Balfour Beatty about access to their park space, looking at the Mary Morrison School and how we can work with our Board of Ed to get some more park space accessible and maybe beefed up for the public. Parks and Rec is looking at some things, and then also from our side in planning and development, we are looking at some parcels that are either underutilized or maybe some other areas for some future park space. So what you're saying and what people have been saying about the need for more park space here is not falling on deaf ears. It just takes a bit of time to get some of this stuff done. Also, historically, I don't know if people are super familiar with the process. We've been talking about our plan of conservation and development, or Groton 2035. That's our long-range plan for the future of the town. We're doing that right now. So if there's concerns about things like park space or housing and how it's distributed around town, the town council hears it and gets, part of that process, but send emails to us, to the staff, so we can give that information to our planning and zoning commission so they get it and they're part of the process when we're working on that plan of conservation and development. And again, that project is also on that greatergroton.com page. One other piece I wanted to touch upon was within the plan, the request for proposals, the public benefit preferences, again, things that the town council really focused on when we were drafting this proposal before we selected a developer. And we really were looking at, things that were required and things that we needed, and then things that we wanted. Some of those policy goals are regardless of the property, and the council's really focused on, how can we grow the town's grand list? But then when we look at specific areas, things like addressing housing, the preservation, and for Pleasant Valley, how can we get the preservation of some of this space for future recreation in this area for the benefit of all Groton residents? And the town council is always looking at how do we balance the need for housing, which we've been hearing a lot about lately, as well as the need for that park and rec space.
All right, so for those RFP goals, just an overview or snapshot of the proposed project concept by the Spinnaker Real Estate Partners and why it was selected is because it hit the key elements that the town council asked for in the best way. So essentially, it's the proposed project concept is a suburban walkable village with much needed housing at varying income levels, including proposed market rate and affordable workforce housing, natural area preservation, and publicly accessible recreation space provided with an overarching objective of placemaking and community building. So the bullets below we can work from for the Q&A. These are the main pieces of the concept that were identified and hit by the proposal and that aligned with the request for proposals that council asked for. So their proposed design style, a high quality and thoughtful design, complementary to the neighborhood and surrounding area, proposed housing component, proposed recreation space that would be publicly accessible. They also added a community engagement piece around that park space. Sustainability measures and the project performance overall is really important to the town. And what we mean by that is helping alleviate the cost of the environmental remediation for something to happen at this parcel, as well as timeliness, being able to put a project, make it take place in a good amount of time, and also a use that helps contribute to the grand list. And then this is another slide we'll work from this evening. So context is key. Again, we aren't at the end, so we don't have all of the information yet. We're in the middle. So essentially what that is town council is selecting a team to partner with to deliver the project concept. This is because we wouldn't be able to ask a lot of different developers to design something to the finish. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars and a lot of our commission's time. So essentially with request for proposal processes, what you do is you pick someone who met the goals with a proposed concept in a certain amount of due diligence. And then once you see that they met those qualifications and their team is qualified, you move through the rest of it with them as a partner. So tonight we're talking about the project concept that was proposed and how it meets those town goals that we just went over, the team's qualifications, their experience, their past projects with other municipalities, and their overall performance, and the project fit and feasibility for the site. Tonight, we aren't able to get into the final terms because those haven't been negotiated yet. That will come next. That includes purchase price for the property or potential tax abatement or the affordability component. And those, especially with the tax abatement, those are important because as a town, we're asking for a lot of public benefits. Those are very cost prohibitive. And as a town, we only have a few tools to help offset that cost, including potentially lowering the price of the property to help see those public benefits come to fruition. We also don't have the final design yet because it hasn't gone through design or engineering yet, but it will. These all come next, and all of those checkpoints and that important information is presented publicly just as we get that information. And then finally, for not applicable, we just have that up here for now because any questions about how the process works or the proposed uses for the site that were identified in the RFP, that would be for our town council. So essentially in the public hearing, we can talk about that as much as people are interested, but essentially we just want to make sure that the questions tonight are directed towards our partner and what our partner can answer.
And so as we're wrapping up, we're going to hand things over to Will in a moment. He's going to give an overview of his firm and kind of their concept, but we did want to talk just briefly about after that we'll do a little bit of Q&A. We got microphones. I think I said to everybody as they were coming in, if you wanted to write questions down on a card for just kind of ease, we can get through those quicker. But again, we got a hard stop at about 6:20 tonight, so we'll definitely have time for questions and answers. And again, kind of what Corinne said, we want to talk tonight about Pleasant Valley and the concept for Pleasant Valley, not necessarily some of our other school properties or other processes happening around town. And at this point, the council's really selecting a partner to work with, and we're still very early in the process on this. Again, next steps. So tonight after this meeting, there's a public hearing that the council's holding at 6:30. If people have other questions or things they want to bring up, there are a number of council members in the room, so they'll hear you now, but you're more than welcome to make those questions or comments at the 6:30 public hearing. And then the town council will be meeting on July 8th to discuss the next steps and how they actually officially select the preferred developer. And if they move forward with that, they make that decision in early August at their August meeting. It then goes to the RTM, then it goes back to the council. And at that point in time, we'd start working on that option to purchase. So again, a lot of steps even just to get this particular developer locked into the process. Again, I can't stress enough, check out our greatergroton.com webpage if people have more questions and information. And at that, I'll hand it over to Will. One more, there you go.
All right, thanks everyone. Really excited to be here to present on the project. I've made this presentation a couple of times in the past to the town council and the redevelopment council. Really, it's a brief overview, as both Jonathan and Corinne mentioned. We're really very early in the process. We have a concept design to share with you. It has a number of units, kind of where we're thinking that public park space will go, some residential amenity space as well. But really a long way to go before any of the design is finalized, but really excited to share what we've put together thus far. Key highlights were experienced developer. I'll get into some of our past projects and current projects in a bit. And proven submarket. There's clearly a strong demand for housing in Groton. I know numerous studies put on by the economic development team here have identified that need for more housing, and we look forward to the opportunity to developing that. So Spinnaker, who are we? Spinnaker's a vertically integrated commercial and multifamily developer. We're based out of Norwalk, Connecticut. Our experience goes back a few decades with commercial development, and then more recently, especially in the last 5 or 10 years, real focus on multifamily projects throughout Connecticut, a few projects outside the state as well. But really, most of the projects that we've worked on are in Connecticut, mainly Norwalk, Wilton, New Haven, Hartford, and elsewhere as well. But those are kind of the primary spots where we've developed. And I say we're vertically integrated, and that means that we have in-house construction management and property management. That really allows us to kind of own and manage the whole process from start to finish, site selection, early development, operations, all the way through construction, and then turning over to property management during lease up. We're a part of it the whole way, and we continue to operate a number of our developments throughout the state, kind of being a long-term holder and really being a stakeholder and being a part of the community in which we develop. Also on our project team, Binefield Architecture, also based in Norwalk, really strong history working with them, Spinnaker and Binefield, a number of projects successfully developed throughout the state. And Binefield Architecture really brings a sort of coastal New England design to a lot of the projects. Some of our projects you'll see have more of sort of an industrial design to them. That's more in our infill urban environments. We see more of a sort of coastal design here, and Binefield's one of the best, if not the best, at achieving that design. So here are a number of recent completions, just to point to our ability to execute on projects that we propose. All of the projects shown here have been completed since 2020, so the last 5 years or so. And then more projects that are either under construction or recently completed, and more projects that are currently in development or in our pipeline. All of these that I've shown here are in Connecticut, and again, just kind of showing our experience, our expertise in multifamily development, and successfully executing on our projects in a timely manner, which I know is an important characteristic for the redevelopment team here. Now to jump into the proposal itself. What we've come up with is a design that allows for approximately 300 apartment units. The concept design is made up of primarily 2- and 3-story buildings at the front of the site that then kind of lead you along these walkable, tree-lined streets to the rear of the site. In the back, we have proposed a little bit more density and maybe a 4- or 5-story building. The natural topography of the site really allows for a little bit more density in the back, since it slopes up before you get to any of the neighboring sites beyond the site to the back. So really kind of helps mask some of that height and density, and also creates an architecturally significant draw for your eye from the street level. And those tree-lined streets in the front of the property are designed to really be walkable, safe, and really give the feeling of a sort of New England, coastal New England village. On the left-hand side of the screen is where we have an open public space component. None of the actual attributes of that public space have been designed. We did hear some great feedback from one of the earlier public comment sessions that there's a real strong desire for playgrounds or some other kind of uses for children. Really welcome that feedback. It was great to hear all the engagement from the community. And as Corinne and Jonathan mentioned, we do plan to have additional community engagement, community outreach sessions later on in the process to further develop that public component and make it something that is really usable to the greater Groton community. In addition, we've set aside 20% of the land area as open space, and that goes along with the conservation goals for the redevelopment here. That open space, we envision that to have walking trails and kind of tie in some of the other local walking paths and trails in the area, and then eventually coming back to the sidewalk and connecting some of the neighborhoods and nearby communities to this site, to the public park, and to those walking trails. The rest of the site, we've set aside some area for amenity space for the residents, and again, hasn't really been fully designed yet, but in summary, the plan would be for 300 units, again, mostly in these 2 to 3 story buildings at the front of the site, with a walkable village feel, bringing you to the rear with some residential amenity space and a significant public park component. In terms of the look and feel, the slide here, these are a number of projects, all designed by Bynefield Architecture. Some of them are a little bit more urban than what we have here, but just to give you an idea, some of the characteristics of the design that we're proposing: pitched roofs, some other things like that really make it feel like a walkable village. Here are some sketches. These are actual sketches for this specific project. Again, to be further developed as we move forward with the project. Here are some pictures from Spinnaker's past projects, some interior photos to give an idea of what our interior finishes look like within the apartment homes themselves. The residential amenity space, we have a lot of outdoor space. We always like to bring the outdoors in and kind of create that connection, usually a fitness component. In this day and age, there's typically a co-working or work from home type of area, and then barbecue grills and community gathering spaces as well. This is back to the overall concept plan. That's where we are right now. Again, very early on in the concept design process, and really excited to be here and looking forward to working with the community through the process, through the engagement sessions to further develop the park and the rest of the project overall.
All right, so this is where we get to the Q&A part. So we are recording tonight, so I'll walk around with the mic. If people have note cards that they'd rather me read off the questions, and then, we'll field the questions, happy to do that. But otherwise, if folks have cards they want me to read, just have the card up. Otherwise, if you have a question, raise your hand, and I'll bring the mic over, and we can start asking some questions. So I'll start here, and I'll work my way back.
I'm just curious, you mentioned negotiating purchase price. Doesn't the town own the school? What are you purchasing?
Correct. So we own the property, and what I was referencing was essentially the amount of public benefits that we're asking for are pretty cost prohibitive, right? If we want public space, that doesn't pay for itself. It costs a lot in maintenance, or affordable housing, also very expensive for someone to build. So because we're asking for a lot of things that cost a lot, we contribute to trying to lower that price. So one way that we can do that as a municipality without putting the money in ourselves is to say, if this property were worth, I'm just throwing out a number, $1 million, we could give it to the developer for less to help offset the cost. to accomplish those public benefits that we've asked for. So that's really what that means, is what will the finest purchase price be for the developer from us, so that we can make sure there's a balance between the amount of public benefits that we're asking for that are very expensive, and that's our way that we can help reduce that price, so the project can actually take place.
And also, so we own the property, we, the town, we are selling it to
Correct.
Spinnaker. So, and,
The parking, are you going to have adequate parking for the occupancy of the building?
Yes.
By numbers?
Yes, so the plan is to have primarily surface parking. There may be some garages available as well, but we'll fully study, the other apartment homes in the community and the overall region, and identify what the actual usage is for parking at, similar sized communities, and come up with a parking ratio that meets or exceeds that demand.
One more question. How do you, as a developer, feel about the neighborhood you're moving into?
We've been excited to be a part of this community for quite a while, so really excited to be here.
I kind of meant the immediate neighborhood of your project. This site specifically came across our desk a few months ago. I think it was late last year. So, we've been studying the area for a while. A number of sites in and around this region this specific site came up as potential for multifamily. As Jonathan mentioned earlier, the availability of infrastructure, public utilities, access to roads and transit really make it a great site for this proposed use.
I had a written question of what are the types of shops in the proposed location of the 2 to 3 story or 4 to 5 story building? So there are no shops, there's no commercial development being proposed as part of this. It's just the multifamily residential that's being proposed. And I think if we looked at the, on that site plan, if Will wants to speak to that, but one thing, this is still very conceptual. So they haven't done the hard engineering and the design. Right now it's a concept. So I think, Will could speak to this more, but the front here is where we're looking at the 2 to 3 stories. In the back part of the property is where it would get potentially into higher stories. Again, having to be either consistent with zoning or looking for relief from zoning. So again, that's something that has to be designed and will go through the planning and zoning process in the future. So I saw a question back over here, and then I'll circle around to Lauren. Yes.
I'm actually mortified when I hear another 300 stories coming in, because I am looking at that ginormous grossness that is up there on Lester Hill Road. Is it Lester Hill? That Triton Walker Hill, which is enormous. And this is going to be very close to it. Our infrastructure is not going to be able to handle that. We've got water, we've got sewer that is, how are you guys going to adjust that for the rest of us that have to live in that community? Our traffic is going to be increased, our police forces are going to have to be increased. There's so much more that goes into it. I also have a question if they're going to get a tax relief from this, so that we, as taxpayers, have to kind of bridge that gap for them, for the police, the added school systems, and all that other stuff that you're saying it's going to be a relief for us in the long run. I'm not saying it.
So I can answer on the infrastructure side of things. Before any of our developments start construction, way in advance, we do infrastructure studies to understand what the existing capacity is for all the things you mentioned: water, sewer, et cetera. Roads as well, traffic studies.
Traffic lights. Right now, I'm having a heck of a time, even with the traffic light we have. So getting out, even crossing the road to get to Stop and Shop, used to take me 5 minutes, now takes me about 10. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of concerned about the traffic, to say the very least.
Completely understand where you're coming from, and noted that that's a concern. I can't speak to the specifics of the stoplight or stop sign that you're talking about, but it's absolutely part of our process to study and understand the current capacity, if there are capacity issues, and then coming up with a plan to alleviate those, or the development, potentially wouldn't happen if there is no capacity.
And then to speak to, I think there were concerns about, police and cost and things along those lines. So, what we have seen, a lot of our multifamily housing development pays for itself and then some. Not a lot of the new stuff is online yet. So Triton Square, which we were talking about, the old Sealy School, the estimate for that is once that is fully up and running and occupied, that'll be paying the town over $1 million a year in taxes. And the cost to the town is going to be substantially less than that. So that will be a net positive from an income perspective to the town. We're going to see the same for this. Is there discussions about some tax abatement for a few years on this property? Yes, there are, because of some of the town council goals that they asked for as part of this project, including that public space, as well as affordable housing that the town is looking for as a percentage of the total amount of units for this site. So, Lauren, and I'll come to you in one moment.
I have several questions. Is that all
Okay.
right? So I guess starting where we left off was, this is a 3 even, but 4 or 5 stories. This is significant intensification of density in that area. I mean, that's single-family homes down there, a bunch of duplexes, not that, right? And so you're speaking of putting it into the more sloped area and the kind of back portion, middle of the back portion. We're going to see that from Route 12. And so I guess I'm wondering, I'm very sensitive to design on that corridor. I do live in the neighborhood, very sensitive to the fact that the town has failed to have a cohesive design or aesthetic or sense of place. And so something that I'm very concerned about is that intensification of seeing basically like the William Sealy monstrosity right there on Route 12, in the way that will significantly change the feel of our environment. You go from living in a little suburb to now you're living in a city, essentially, a small city. Yeah, it's going to completely change the feel, just even from Route 12, not even standing in front of it, right? Because you have that view corridor. So any concept plans you come about, I very much will request view corridors from Route 12, as well as from Pleasant Valley West. So that's just one comment. As far as the traffic goes, yes, the sidewalks immediately in front of this property are great because it was a public school and a public asset and should remain a public asset. However, all of the roads leading down into it from Leicestertown, from Walker Hill, they're narrow. They're very narrow, and folks often park on the sidewalks, forcing strollers, walkers, runners into the road. And with the hills, those crests, those are blind crests. Every day I'm wondering, is this going to be the day that I'm going to get in a head-on collision coming up? Because it's not just 300, potentially maybe up to 500 units if you're going to 5 stories. William Sealy's coming online, that's 400. Fairview has about a 300 going online. Right down the road at the end of Tollgate, the far end of Tollgate, that's another few hundred units. Down at Crystal Lake, that's another several hundred units. And so the amount of traffic is concerning, given the poor quality of those roads. And not only that, I worry about the way that folks cut through the business properties onto Route 12 and the traffic near misses you see on a daily basis, because folks are trying to cut around the stop signs, the stoplights. Right, exactly. And especially like Sunday morning church, I mean, they have a cop posted out there. God forbid you get stuck in Chipotle lunch traffic. It's, that intersection is, it's a deal. And also not the speed that people go trying to get down to the sub base, trying to get to EB. This is a huge intensification on top of the, 751 units that have already been greenlit. I guess my question specifically, are there any ownership options for any of these units? And if not, why not?
So first, to address the design concerns, again, very early in the process, so appreciate the feedback that you have. We do have a different design than, some of the buildings that have been constructed or are currently being constructed in town. And hopefully it's well received and appreciated. Obviously, everyone has their own taste, and, not everyone shares in what they like in terms of building design. But certainly that can be a part of what we present in future community sessions and get feedback from neighbors like yourself in guiding what that design looks like. As Jonathan mentioned, we're early in the planning and zoning we haven't even started the planning and zoning process. So everything that we do on that front will go through planning and zoning before anything is approved. You mentioned traffic concerns as well, and utility issues came up earlier as well. So again, all of these things will be a part of our early development studies. Neighboring streets, it sounds like there's already an existing issue, so I can't really speak to that as it relates to this specific development. But certainly, we can learn lessons from traffic patterns that people are currently taking and take that into consideration when it comes to our development. Remind me what the last question was?
Ownership models for units?
Yes, right now, it's designed to be a rental community, and that's right now for the way we presented it and proposed. It's a more financeable project in order to get it off the ground and executed in a timely manner. It's a structure that's worked for us in the past, and that's kind of the structure that we've proposed here.
So if there is a priority on public space, why are we picking the entire middle of this property instead of trying to fit this more off to the side so that a large parcel can be remaining in the public trust?
Yeah, we can certainly look into it. The way that it was designed right now is to take into consideration that natural topography and try to pick the areas that were really flat, already developed. The school that was the baseline for where we started to put buildings down, and the building will be demolished, and then that would be the same location as where the new buildings would go. Already fairly level since the buildings are already there. So kind of the path of least resistance is to do it that way, but certainly we can look into expanding that public component within reason. Yeah.
Will this public component be owned by the public?
Right now, it's designed or proposed that we would own the entire parcel and maintain it as well for the public.
Thank you. Oh,
And-
this one.
And just one more thing on the public component. Spinnaker, across our portfolio, we have a number of examples of these sort of public areas. One of the benefits for the developer to own it is that maintenance and maintaining it in a sort of Class A or clean and safe environment. Most of the examples that I could share with you are more urban, but in any event, it's been a good example as to what we can expect here in terms of operation and maintenance.
Hi, my question is for the public park area. I know you're in the very early stages of designing it. Is it more geared towards for kids, like playscapes, or you're looking to do more like a playscape and like a gazebo so families can come and have events or something like that for the public?
Yeah, again, it really hasn't been designed yet, so we'd love to hear the feedback as to what various preferences are. Obviously, families are going to prefer, a public component more geared towards kids. Other people may prefer more sort of community gathering spaces, places to have events, things like that. So, we welcome feedback and we'll come up with a design a little bit farther down the road.
And a little bit later in the process, once we get a few stages later, there actually will be a public engagement component that Will and his team will do with the community to try to get some real hard information about what do people want, what's the space, how can we best design this? And I think some of that falls into the slide that Corinne has up now. A few other questions that came up. What is the bottom line number of units to make it worth, apartment developers' while, I guess, really on a site like this?
There are so many factors that go into that. I think that's kind of, that we don't really have, I don't have really a number today to share, but certain things go into that, like what the purchase price is for the land, and kind of thinking of things as on a per unit basis. So don't really have an answer as to what the minimum is, but We've come up with 300 units. The site can fit more than that. It can fit less than that, but 300 is where we landed in our initial concept design and proposal.
What are the projected price points for those units, and who would you be planning to market to?
We haven't fully developed our rent roll or projected rents yet. I know we talked earlier, there is a projected, we are projected to have a affordability component that may range 10% of the apartments, up to 20% of the apartments designated as affordable. We don't have the rent limits on what the affordable units will be renting at, and we don't have a rent roll created for the market rate units either.
What are the hypothetical guarantees of public land access if nothing is town-owned for the park space?
Yeah, what we've done in the past is we've had sort of an open space agreement, and that is something that we can talk about doing here. It's a part of our development proposal to include this public space. I'm sure will be a requirement as part of our negotiations and purchase and sale agreement. So there's a commitment from us as the developer to develop, and then an open space agreement or something similar to that, which will provide us with an obligation to operate and maintain that going forward.
Yeah, and to kind of further build upon that, we've already gotten suggestions from some of our boards and commissions about possible conservation easements that could be used on some of the site. And from a town perspective, if we have all the guarantees in place through easements and other legal agreements, and we don't own the property, they're maintaining it. They're doing all the work to keep it nice, and it's not your tax dollars that are paying for it. So that's something that's positive that comes of it. Another question where would the parking lots go?
So the parking lots are designed to kind of be integrated within that walkable village-like feel. Parking along those village streets with trees lining those streets and sidewalks to protect pedestrians that are walking throughout the site. Again, since we haven't fully really developed this public component, we'll of course include a parking lot for that space as well.
And then, just to kind of build upon some of the questions we've been hearing. So, within Groton, we have about 39,000 people. We have a workforce of over 27,000 people, and approximately 82% of those people commute here. We've been hearing a lot of concerns about, lately, there's been too much development and too much traffic. As a matter of fact, most of the development that's been approved by the town's Planning and Zoning Commission hasn't been built yet. And what we've seen is a real big ramp up in traffic because EB has been ramping up its workforce substantially over the past number of years. A lot of those people don't live here. Although some of these units might be marketed to the EB workforce, some of these units might be marketed also to people that are already here that maybe live in a house that's too much for them. They want to sell. The more of that EB workforce that we get living within Groton, then people are going to be speeding less on their roads because they're not worried about the half-hour commute as opposed to the 5-minute drive that they have to get home. So some of that is also worked into, when we look at the needs of housing within the town, we've done market studies to show that we need over 6,000 units to meet demand in Groton for housing. That's just within the town of Groton. So just to kind of give things a little bit of context. Were there more questions? All right.
I have a feeling that the majority of people in this room are not happy about this because we live in the community. See the little corner shop there on the right, that little tiny condo complex? That's where we live. And you're proposing to put this in our backyard, and I can assure you none of us want that. You're going to put walking trails. We're going to have people walking around behind where we live. What are you going to do to protect us and our serenity that we've, lived here for all these years, and now you're going to come in, and this property's been sitting here for 7 years, and now you decide that you want to do this and spoil the serenity that the people that are living here? I guarantee there's a bunch of them in this room, and nobody wants this. So what are you going to do to protect the people that live here now by adding this monstrosity?
So first, I just want to clarify, Corinne and myself, we're staff. We work for the town. We work for the town manager. Town manager and us implement policies and direction that your town council does. So We haven't proposed anything here. I just want to make it clear. Are we working with the developer because the town has identified this property as excess? We certainly have. So one of the things that we've heard from people, and this is where we have to weigh and balance a lot of things, is some people have asked for more hiking and walking trails through those woods back behind there, and more playgrounds and more access to the public there. And then others don't want it because they don't want people next to their yard. So those are things that we can figure out through that later process, and we have to balance that public benefit. At the end of the day, the groups that make those decisions are the town council through the legal agreement they make with the developer. Once that agreement is made with the developer of, hey, we're going to sell this property, generally consistent with this concept, developer goes back, works with his experts, designs a project. They then come back to the council and say, all right, here was our original concept. We've now spent hundreds of thousands of dollars designing this, engineering this. Before we take this to the next step, is this what you found consistent? Oh, and also in there, there's going to be some public outreach engaging about those public space designs. At that point, if the council gives it the thumbs up, they then go to the town's planning and zoning commission, which is made up of members of the public like yourself that serve on these boards and committees. They have to review it to be consistent with the town's regulations. It goes through a process. There's requirement for public space, groundwater protection, surface water protection, stormwater, traffic, all of these things. Once they go through that process and the plan will change a little bit, then they get their approval. If the plan's changed a lot, they actually have to go back to the town council and say, hey, here's how the plan changed. We think it's still consistent with the concept, and based on the site constraints and other things, here's where we are. So there are a lot of steps. I don't know if you want to weigh into that anymore. Will?
Yeah, I think you did a good job answering that. There's of course a balance in terms of what everyone wants in terms of the public component, whether it's geared towards younger kids, walking trails, hiking paths. We are only talking about the property itself. So it's not extending beyond that, if that was what your concern is. If we need to, kind of route some of those trails so people don't go back in a certain direction, that can certainly be a part of sort of the design and the engineering of the project itself. The public component that we've designed, the park, is on the opposite side of the project, specifically to your question. The walking trails do kind of meander in the back, but if we need to make some modifications to that, certainly open to it.
Thank you. So, without going into too much detail, the proposal includes tearing down the buildings, the old buildings, and environmental remediation of that area, which, it's going to take, I think, no matter what happens with the property, it's going to be, something to consider financially. I just wanted to get that clear. That was part of what was going on. I also want to note that the view from my backyard is Groton Square. I live right across the street from it, and no accounting for taste, but we don't find it too offensive, even at night when the lights are on. It's been okay for us. We've been here for over a decade, so I'm not opposed to it. Thank you.
Before I get to second questions, anybody who hasn't asked a question yet want to go? Going once. All right, and we have a hard stop in about a minute. I'm going a little over, but Lauren's got one more question.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but the town council does not actually have to go through with this development. They can still walk away from it. And the purpose of tonight's 6:30 public hearing is to put on the public record, and as far as I'm aware with like planning and zoning, that's the legal record of what folks want. So if people want to speak again at 6:30 and have it on public record to ask the town council not to move forward, that's still a choice, right? We are not locked into this development.
Nothing has legally been signed yet. The council has gone through an RFP process, but again, we're not locked into anything. There's been a lot of recommendations, and that's why, Corinne has made this graphic of showing what the town's, public disposition process is, and sorry, it's small on here because trying to get all of the steps and things that have to be done on one piece of paper is pretty difficult. This graphic is available on that Greater Groton webpage, so if people want to look at all the steps and kind of the times where the council and other groups and the public get to kind of raise their hand, ask questions, give input, there's a lot of hurdles that they have to get to before they ever put a shovel in the ground.
And within that, you can see there is a hearing held prior to deeming the property excess, where the council heard about what the community wanted for that property, and that helped inform the RFP. So that's where that balance came from of, is it housing, is it park space, is it something that the town wants to see developed? Because currently, it's been vacant for a very long time, not producing any taxes, becoming more and more of an environmental challenge. So essentially, that initial hearing is what helped inform the council decide what this could be at this point.
All right, and last question, this portion of the meeting, we got a hard stop in a second because there's a council meeting at 6:30. If people want to stick around for that public hearing on Pleasant Valley, it'll start, council meeting starts at 6:30. The public hearing will be a few minutes after that. But one more question, Kathy?
Mainly a statement. If, like clockwork, July 1st, check your mailboxes. Your taxes are in there. We do need responsible growth in Groton, and I think that there is so much transparency here, and they really want to hear from the people that live in Groton about the growth that we are having here. So check your taxes and then, follow all of this.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. Again, meeting for the council starts at 6:30. We appreciate all of you coming. If you have questions, check out greatergroton.com or shoot myself or Corinne an email. We're happy to chat and talk. Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Oh, thanks.
Thank you.